Hello, and welcome back to Kim Reads as we continue with Wicked. This chapter, Maladies and Remedies. For days, Melena couldn't bear to look at a thing. She held it, as a mother must. She waited for the groundwater of maternal affection to rise and overwhelm her. She did not weep. She chewed pin-wobble leaves to float away from the disaster. It was a she. It was a her. Melena practiced conversations in her thinking when she was alone. The twitching, unhappy bundle was not male. It was not neutered. It was a female. It slept looking like a heap of cabbage leaves washed and left to drain on the table. So, do you think the green wouldn't matter if she was a boy? In a panic, Melena wrote to Colwyn Grounds to drag Nanny away from her retirement. Frex went in a carriage to collect Nanny from the way station at Stone Spar's End. On the trip back, Nanny asked what was wrong. "What is wrong?" He sighed and was lost in thought. Nanny realized she had chosen her words poorly. Now Frex was distracted. He began to mumble in a general way about the nature of evil. A vacuum set up by the inexplicable absence of the unnamed god, and went which into spiral poisonous rush, a vortex. "I mean, what is the state of the child?" retorted Nanny explosively. "It's not the universe, but a single child I need to hear about if I'm going to be any help. Why does Melena call for me instead of her mother? Why is there no letter to her grandfather? He's the eminent Throp, for goodness sakes." Melena can't have forgotten her duties so thoroughly. Or is there a life out in the country worse than we thought? "It's worse than we thought," said Frex grimly. "The baby..." "You'd better be prepared, Nanny, so you don't scream. The baby is damaged." "Damaged?" Nanny's grip on her valise tightened and she looked over the red leaf pearl fruit trees by the side of the road. "Frex, tell me everything." "It's a girl," said Frex. "Damaged indeed," said Nanny mockingly, but Frex, as usual, missed the dig. "Well, at least the family's title's preserved for another generation. Has she got all her limbs?" "Yes." "Any more than she needs?" "No." "Is she sucking?" "We can't let it. It has extraordinary teeth, Nanny. It has shark's teeth or something like." "Well, she won't be the first grandchild to grow on a bottle or rag instead of a tit. Don't worry about that." "It's the wrong color," said Frex. "What color is the wrong color?" For a few moments, Frex could only shake his head. Nanny did not like him, and she would not like him, but she softened. "Frex, it can't be that bad. There's always a way out. Tell Nanny." "It's green," he finally said. Nanny, it's green as moss." "She's green, you mean. It's a she, for heaven's sake." "It's not for heaven's sake," Frex began to weep. "Heaven is not approved by it, Nanny, and heaven does not approve. What are we to do?" "Hush." Nanny detested weeping men. "It can't be as bad as all that. Isn't a sniff of low blood in Melena's veins. Whatever blight the child will respond to Nanny's treatment. Trust Nanny." "I trust in the unnamed God," sobbed Frex. "We don't always work at cross purposes, God and Nanny," said Nanny. She knew this was blasphemous, but she couldn't resist the guy as long as Frex's was down. "But don't worry, I won't breathe a word to Melena's family. We'll sort this all out in a flash, and no one need to know. The baby has a name?" "Elphaba," he said. "After St. Elphaba the waterfall?" "Yes." "A fine old name. You'll use the common nickname Fabala, I suppose." "Who knows if she'll even live long enough to grow into a nickname?" Frex sounded as if he hoped this was the case. "Interesting country. Are we in Wend Harding's yet?" Nanny asked to change the subject, but Frex had holed it up inside, barely bothering to guide horses onto the correct track. The country was filthy, depressed, peasant-ridden. Nanny began to wish she had not set out in her best traveling gown. Roadside robbers might expect to find gold on such a refined older woman, and they would be right, for Nanny sported a golden garter stolen years ago from her ladyship's boudoir. What a humiliation if the garter should turn up with these years later on Nanny's well-turned, if aging thigh. But Nanny's fears were unfounded, for the carriage arrived without incident in the yard of the minister's cottage. "Let me see the baby first," said Nanny. "It will be easier and fairer on Melena if I know what we're dealing with." And this wasn't hard to arrange, as Melena was out cold thanks to pinned lava leaves, while the baby in a basket on the table wailed softly. Nanny drew up a chair so she wouldn't hurt herself. She fainted dead away. "Frex, put the basket on the floor where I can look at it." Frex obliged, and then went to return the horses and carriage to Fee, who rarely intended them for mayoral duties, but loaned them out to earn a little political capital. The infant was wrapped in linens, Nanny saw, and the baby's mouth and ears were strapped in a sling. The nose looked like a knob of a bad mushroom, poking out for air, and the eyes were wide open. Nanny leaned closer. The child couldn't be, 3 weeks old? Yet, as Nanny moved from side to side, looking at the profile of the forehead from this angle and that, as to judge the state of the mind, the girl's eyes tracked her back and forth. They were brown and rich, the color of overturned earth, flecked with mica. There was a network of fragile red lines at each soft angle where the eyelids met, as if the girl had been bursting the blood threads from the exertion of watching and understanding. And yes, the skin was green as sin. Not an ugly color, Nanny thought, just not a human color. She reached out and let her finger drip across the baby's cheek. The infant flinched, and her backbone arched, and the wrapping, which was tucked securely around the child from neck to toe, split open like a husk. Nanny gritted her teeth and was determined not to be cowed. The baby had exposed herself, sternum to groin, and the skin on her chest was the same remarkable color. "Have you even touched this child yet, you two?" murmured Nanny. She put her hand palm on the child's heaving chest, her fingers covering the almost invisible baby nipples, and slid her hand down so she could check the apparatus below. The child was wet and soiled, but made accordingly to standard design. The skin was the same miracle, pliant smoothness that Melena had possessed as an infant. "Come to Nanny, you horrid little thing, you." Nanny leaned to pick the baby up, mess and all. The baby swiveled to avoid the touch. Her head beat against the rush bottom of the basket. "You've been dancing in the womb, I see," said Nanny. "I wonder to whose music." "Such well-developed muscles." "No, you're not getting away from here. Come here, you little demon." "Nanny doesn't care. Nanny likes you." She was lying through her teeth, but unlike Fresh, she believed some lies were sanctioned by heaven. And she got her hand on Elphaba and settled on her lap. There Nanny waited, crooning every now and then, looking away out the window to recover herself and keeping from vomiting. She rumbled down the baby's belly to calm the girl down, but there was no calming her down, not yet anyway. Melena propped herself up to her elbows in the late afternoon when Nanny brought a tea and tray with tea and bread. "I've made myself at home," said Nanny, "and I've made friends with your tiny darling. Now come to your senses, sweetheart, let me give you a kiss." "Oh, Nanny," Melena allowed herself to be coddled. "Thank you for coming. Have you seen the little monster?" "She's adorable," said Nanny. "Don't lie and don't be soft," said Melena. "If you're going to help me, you must be honest." "If I'm going to help you, you must be honest," said Nanny. "We need not going at it now, but I need to know everything, my sweet, so we can decide what's to be done." They sipped their tea, and because Elphaba had fallen asleep at last, it seemed like moments like the old days at Colwyn Grounds, when Melena would come home from afternoon walks with lithesome young gentry on the make and boast of their masculine beauty to a Nanny who pretended like she didn't notice. In fact, as the weeks went on, Nanny noticed quite a few disturbing things about the baby. For one thing, Nanny tried to remove the baby's bandages, but Elva seemed intent on biting her own hands off. And the teeth inside the pretty thin-lipped mouth were indeed monstrous. She could bite a hole through the basket she had left unfeathered. She went after her own shoulder and scraped it raw. She looked as if she were strangling. Can't a barber be had to pull the teeth out?" Nanny asked. At least until the baby learned some self-control. You're out of your mind, said Melena. Be all over the valley that the little marrow was green. We'll keep the jaw strapped up until we solve the skin problem. How in the world did her skin become green? Nanny wondered stupidly, for Melena blanched and Frex reddened, and the baby held her breath as she was trying to turn blue to please them all. Nanny had to slap her to make her breathe again. Nanny interviewed Frex out in the yard. After the double blow of the birth and his public embarrassment, he was not up yet to professional engagements and sat whittling praying beans out of oaks, scoring and describing them with emblems of the namelessness of God. Nanny set Elphaba down inside. She had unreasonable fear of being overheard by this infant, and a worse of being understood. Nanny sat scooping out a pumpkin for supper. I don't suppose, Frex, that you had green in your family background, she began, knowing full well that Melena's powerful grandfather would have concerned such a predisposition before agreeing to his granddaughter marry a union minister, of all the chances she had. Our family isn't about money or about earthly power, said Frex, taking no offense for once, but I'm descended into a direct line from 6 ministers before me, father to son, and we're all regarded in spiritual circles as Melena's family in the parlors in the court of Ozma. And no, there is no green anywhere. I've never heard such a thing in any family. Nanny nodded and said, well, all right then, I was only asking. I know you're gooder than goblin martyrs. But, Frex said humbly, Nanny, I think I caused the thing to happen. My tongue slipped on the day of the birthday. I announced that the devil was coming. I meant the clock of the time dragon, but supposedly those words unlocked a room for the devil. The child is no devil, snapped Nanny. She's no angel either, she thought, but she kept it to herself. On the other hand, Frex continued, sounding more secure, she may have been cursed by Melena accidentally, who took my remark the wrong way and wept about it. Maybe Melena opened herself a window through which an unattached sprite entered and colored the child. On the very day she is to be born, said Nanny. That's a capable sprite. Is your goodness so exalted you extracted the truly high power among the spirits of aberration? Frex shrugged. A few weeks earlier he would have nodded that his confidence was shattered with his abject failure in rush margin. He did not dare suggest what he feared. The child's abnormality was a punishment for his failure to protect his flock from the pleasure faith. Well, Nanny said practically, and through a curse the goods were damaged, and then through what might the ill be overturned? An exorcism, said Frex. Are you empowered? If I'm successful at changing her, we'll know I'm empowered, said Frex. But now that he had a goal, his spirits brightened. He would spend some days fasting, rehearsing prayers, and collecting supplies for the arcane ritual. While he was off in the woods, Elphaba was napping. Nanny perched on the side of Melena's hard marriage mattress. Frex wonders if the prediction that the devil was coming caused by a window in you to open, letting the imp pass and spoil the baby, said Nanny. She was crocheting an edge of lace clumsily. She had never excelled at piecework, but she liked handling the polished ivory crochet hook. I wonder if you opened another window. Melena, groggy from pin lobble leaves as usual, arched an eyebrow in confusion. Did you sleep with somebody other than Frex? Nanny asked. Don't be mad, said Melena. I know you, honey, said Nanny. I'm not saying you're not a good wife, but when you had boys buzzing around you in your parents' orchard, you changed your perfumed undergarments more than once a day. You were lusty and sneaky and good at it. I'm looking down at you, but don't pretend to me that your appetites weren't healthy. Melena buried her face in the pillow. For those days, she said. It's not that I don't love Frex, but I hate being better than the local peasant idiots. Well, now this green child brings you down to their level, you ought to be pleased, said Nanny meanly. Nanny, I love Frex, but he leaves me alone so often. I would kill for some tinker to pass by and sell me more than a tin coffee pot. I would pay well for someone less godly and more imaginative. That's a question for the future, said Nanny sensibly. I'm asking you about the past, the recent past, since your marriage. But Melena's face was vague and blurry. She nodded, she shrugged, she rocked her head. The obvious theory is an elf, said Nanny. I wouldn't have sex with an elf, Melena shrieked. Nor would I, said Nanny, but the green does give one pause. Are there elves in the neighborhood? There's a gaggle of them, tree elves up over the hill someplace. When they possible, they are more moronic than the fair citizens of Rush Margins. Really, Nanny, I've never seen one, or only from a distance. The idea is repulsive. Elves giggle at everything. Do you know that? One of them falls out of an oak tree and smashes his skull like a rotten turnip, and they gather and giggle, and then forget about him. It's insulting of you to bring it up. Get used to it if we don't find a way out of this quagmire. Well, the answer is no. Then someone else handsome enough on the outside, but carrying a germ that maybe you caught. Melena looked shocked. She hadn't thought of her own health since Elphaba was born. Could she be at risk? The truth, said Nanny. We must know. The truth, said Melena distantly. Well, it's unknowable. What are you trying to say? I don't know the answer to your question, Melena explained. Yes, the cottage was off the beaten track, and of course, she never passed more than the curtest greetings with local farmers and fishermen and thickheads, but more travelers took the hill and woods than you would credit. Often she sat listless and lonely while Frex was off preaching, and she found comfort in giving passerby a simple meal and a boycott conversation. And more? But on those boring days, Melena muttered, she had taken to chewing pinlobble leaves. When she would awake because the sun was setting or Frex was there frowning and grinning at her, she remembered little. You mean you indulge in idolatry and you don't have the good benefit of a good saucy memory about it? Nanny was scandalized. I don't know that I did, said Melena. I wouldn't choose to. I mean, not if I was thinking clearly. But remember once when a tinker with a funny accent gave me a draft of some heady brew from a green glass bottle, and I had rare, expensive dreams, Nanny of the other world. Cities of glass and smoke, noise and color, I try to remember. So you could have been well raped by elves. Won't your grandfather be pleased to learn how Frex is taking care of you? Stop, cried Melena. Well, I know what's to be done. Nanny lost her temper at last. Everyone's being irresponsible. If you can't remember whether your marriage vows have been broken or not, there's not much good in acting like an offended saint. We can always drown the baby and start over. Just try drowning that thing, muttered Nanny. I pity the poor lake ass to take her in. Later, Nanny went through Melena's small collection of medicines, herbs, drops, roots, Randy's leaf. She was wondering without much hope if she could invent something that would cause the girl's skin to blanch. In the back of the chest, Nanny found the green glass bottle spoken of by Melena. The light was bad and her eyes weren't strong, but she could make out the words miracle elixir on a piece of paper pasted to the front. Though she had a native skill in healing, Nanny was unable to come up with a skin-changing potion. Bathing the child in cow's milk didn't make the skin white either, but the child would not allow us to be lowered into a pail of lake water. She twisted like a cat in a panic. Nanny kept on with the cow's milk. It left a horrid sour stink if she did not rub it thoroughly with a cloth. Frex organized an exorcism. It involved candles and hymns. Nanny watched from a distance. The man was beady-eyed, perspiring with effort even though the mornings were colder and colder. Elphaba slept in her binding cloth in the middle of the carpet, oblivious to the sacrament. Nothing happened. Frex fell, exhausted and spent, cradled his green daughter within the crook of his arm, as if finally embracing the proof of some undisclosed skin. Melena's voice hardened. There was only one left to try. Nanny gathered the courage to bring it up on the day she was to leave for Colwyn grounds. We see that peasant treatments don't work, said Nanny, and spiritual intercession has failed. Don't you have the courage to think about sorcery? Is there someone local who could magic the green venom out of the child? Frex was up and lashed at Nanny, swinging his fist. Nanny fell backward off her stool, and Melena bobbed about her, shrinking. How dare you, cried Frex. In this household, isn't this green girl insulting enough? Sorcery is the refuge of the immoral. When it is an out-and-out charlatanism, it's dangerously evil. Contradicts with demons. Nanny said, "Ooh, preserve me, you fine man. Don't you know enough to fight fire with fire?" "Nanny, enough," said Melena. "Hitting a feeble old woman," said Nanny Hurt, "who only tries to help." The next morning, Nanny packed her valise. There was nothing more she could do. She wasn't willing to live the rest of her life with a fanatical hermit and a ruined baby, even for the sake of Melena. Frex drove Nanny back to the inn at Stone Spar's End for the coach and four to take her home. Nanny knew Melena might still think about killing the child, but somehow she doubted it. Nanny held her valise to her ample bosom, fearing bandits again. Inside her valise was hidden her gold garter. She could always claim it had been planting there without her knowledge, where it would have been hard to claim it had been planting on her leg in the same circumstances. She had also squirreled away the ivory crocheted hook, 3 of Frex's prayer beads, because she liked the carvings and all the pretty green glass bottle left behind some internet salesman apparently dreams of passionate somnolence. She didn't know what she thought. Was Elphaba the devil's spawn? Was she half elf? Was she punishment for her father's failure as a preacher, or for her mother's sloppy morals and bad memory? Or was she merely a physical ailment, a blight like a mishappened apple or a 5-legged cat? Nanny knew her world review was foggy and chaotic, pestered by demons, fake and faux science. It didn't escape her attention, however, that both Melena and Frex had been uncompromisingly that they would have had a boy. Frex was the 7th son of a 7th son, and to add to the powerful equation, he would send from 6 ministers in a row. Whatever child of either, or any sex, could dare fall in so auspicious a line? Perhaps, thought Nanny, little green Elphaba chose her own sex and her own color, and to hell with her parents. And that's the end of that chapter. See you later.